Hey, we back with more Mudae video, and I'm talking about game modes today. There are two game modes at the moment, but which one is better? Which one is going to give you the best characters? Because there is a definitive answer to that at this point. Like, let's be real. It used to be debatable, but now not so much. So first I'm just going to go over what they are, and then we're going to discuss which is better and why. So default game mode 1, that's probably the one that you're used to. It's the one that most people play on. As it says, game mode 1 is default mode. You can also have second instances, but then second instances can't be set to default mode. So if you do have a large enough server that decided to use a second instance, you will have used game mode 2 on there at least. So game mode 1, as I say, that's default. That's how Mudae normally works. You know, you've got your roles and all the rest of it, which is all the same anyway. But then the point is, the main difference is the disables, right? The disable lists. Game mode 1, you've got your disable list. Default of 20,000 characters, Patreon 25,000, and then if you've got upgrades, however many you like. I don't have Patreon, I've just got upgrades on here, and I've got over 25,000. Big stonks, better than Patreon, without even having Patreon. Epic. Anyway, disable lists are, as I'm sure you're aware, pretty useful. They disable characters in the bot, so you don't have to roll them. If we have a look at left, we currently have 68,000, roughly, characters in the bot, and I can disable here, I'm disabling 23,000 of them. So that means that there's now only about 40,000 in the bot. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, it's absolutely a good thing, because you pick which ones you disable. If you're disabling 20,000 characters that you don't want, then the chances of you rolling the ones you do want go up, right? If you want more information on disable lists, I've done videos in the past. I will probably do them in the future as well. So yes, but the point is with game mode 2 is it works a little differently, as you can see from this game mode command that we can read here. What it does is it disables the maximum amount of less popular characters by claim rank with a single command. So you no longer need disable lists. In fact, you shouldn't add them, and I'll get to that in a minute. But lim roll here. So for example, if you put 7,000, 7,000, 4,000, 4,000, it means you can only roll 7,000 different WAs, 7,000 HAs, 4,000 WGs, 4,000 HGs. Now, when this was first added, there were about 30,000 characters in the bot. And with your 20,000 disables, that means you would only be rolling 10,000 characters. Compare this to lim roll, you add all of these up, we've got 14,000, 18,000, 22,000. So instead of rolling 10,000 characters, you're now rolling 22,000 characters. As you can see, you're rolling more characters on game mode 2. This makes game mode 1 better. Straight up. But then more characters have been added since then, right? And as the number of characters keeps going up, the number of characters that you roll in game mode 1 also keeps going up, because the number of disables that you get by default does not keep going up, right? So with game mode 1, you can still only disable 20,000 characters, but now that there's almost 70,000 in the bot, that means you're rolling 50,000 characters, whereas game mode 2 doesn't work like that, so that hasn't changed. We still have 7,000, 7,000, 4,000, 4,000. So now with game mode 2, you're still only rolling 22,000 characters total, as opposed to the 50,000 that you could possibly get with game mode 1. So that makes game mode 2 nowadays a lot better, and as the days go by, more characters are added. Game mode 2 is going to keep getting better and better. For example, there was an announcement on Mudae World recently. Mostly they're just having more API issues, it's expected, but also we're going to have another 4,000 characters being added. This is actually tomorrow. For me it's tomorrow anyway. So now we're going to go over 70,000, and as more characters are added, your disable list in game mode 1 gets worse and worse, and your lim roll in game mode 2 does not get worse and worse, which means that game mode 2 is now significantly better for rolling the characters that you want. So I would advise using it. However, there are reasons not to, depending on who you are, because obviously lim roll is server-wide. This means that if you have put a lot of work into your disable list, yes, you may be rolling worse stuff than if you were on game mode 2, but so is everyone else. You're all at the same disadvantage. So if you have a really good disable list, wanting game mode 1 makes sense because you are at slightly less of a disadvantage to everyone else. Whereas when you go on game mode 2, it's all very fair. Now, as a server owner, I say that going for the fair option is the best, especially since everyone rolls more of what they want anyway. So I would say game mode 2 is better. But if you want that secret little extra bit of advantage, then perhaps you should try and go for game mode 1. Now, the real advantage with disables, as is always the case, is the upgrades that you get with towers, for example. If we have a look at my bonus here, we can see my personal disable list has an extra 2 slots. My disable list slice is that extra 5,500, which is actually mostly from KL at this point, but also some from KT. If I got some more floors, it would be more. However, let's just suppose I flip over to game mode 2 here. The bonus is still there. It is just now limb roll limits. Instead, we get -700 for game and -1,000 for Animanka. This arguably is actually better than the benefits here, because while this is still perfectly helpful, this actually does not help too much. I mean, I showed my disable list here anyway. I've got 10 slots by default and I'm only using 4 of them. These extra 2 are not helping me at all, and as long as your disable list is optimized to have less series in it, then you won't be using them either. There are some people I see who make sure they're super close to this by adding a bunch of small series, and actually that very rarely helps, because while your literal number of disables go up, so does your overlap limit. The less series you have here, the less your overlap limit is going to be, the more optimized it is, you know? So it's generally better to actually have a smaller disable list but still have more disabled, which is why you want to go for these big ones like Kadakawa and Western and such, right? However, here we don't have that problem because we just have the limb roll limits, and because we have the lower limb roll limits, that's a personal thing. That means your advantage from your KLs and your KTs are still getting through to the limb roll. Your disables are still getting better. So you don't have to worry about that. Game mode 2 is still taking into account your Kakura advantages. So personally, I do think game mode 2 is in basically every way superior. If you have worked really hard on a disable list and you're in a competitive server, lobbying for a game mode 1 server does make sense. I won't hold it against you. But yeah, game mode 2 is just generally better for everyone. So I would advise going for that. Now, I did say I would mention the disable lists in game mode 2. I think I've done a video about this before, but I will briefly mention it. As it says here, you can disable a specific series with disable. In game mode 2, you can still disable stuff, but you even have unlimited series slots, right? Very helpful. But the same amount of characters are enabled if you go below the limits mentioned above, these 7,000 and 4,000 limits. So if you disable if your limb roll is already at minimum and then you disable something, then you disable those characters, but it will enable less popular ones from the limb roll. And the chances are you are disabling something that is not in the top like 20,000. Pretty much any series that you're going to disable is going to have at least one character in the top 20,000, especially if you're going for these big bundles, you know. Let's have a look at Fuji TV. That's even the smallest one here, right? Let's say you disable this, right? Now all of this stuff down here was disabled anyway, so it makes no difference to you at all. But now these higher ranked stuff are now disabled, and a bunch of stuff at rank 22,000 from random series is now enabled. Is that a trade-off you want? I don't think it's a trade-off you want. You know, even if you don't know these characters and you don't want them, it's still better to have these than a bunch of rank 22,000 ones that you don't know or want, right? Because then you get the Kakura. So yeah, there's literally no point in adding extra disables on game mode 2. It will hinder you rather than help you. So yeah, be careful about the wording on here, because it does make that quite obvious, but it's kind of hidden away in the rest of the game mode command here. Another thing that it points out for admins, the server limroll changes the limits for everyone. I said that it was a server-wide thing. Technically it's not. If you are using it, you are probably going to want to make it server-wide to make it fair, right? Because that's the point of using game mode 2, you know, you're trying to make it fair. So I would advise using serve limroll and setting it to the minimum values just so everyone's on the same playing field. Otherwise, like, because the point is everyone is going to want to run this command. It's just anyone that doesn't know that the command exists isn't going to run it, you know. And that's just unnecessarily harsh, I think. So yeah, you are going to want to run this if you are an admin, I'm pretty sure, but you don't have to. Also, as it says here, you can just use limroll 1111 to be safe with your lowest limits. That will work, and default it will just set it to this. But like I said, it depends on your bonuses as well. If you're doing this for a personal thing, you might be able to set them even lower. You never know. But anyway, that's all I was going to talk about. Just the game modes, 1 and 2. 2 is better. 1 used to be better, and now 2 is better. So yeah. But for now, I'll leave it here. Bye.